There have been over 205,000 games played in Major League Baseball history, with a total attendance of over 3.6 billion fans. Yet on Wednesday, April 29, 2015, one game took place in front of 0 fans, and it wasn't due to lack of interest. Earlier in the month, on April 12, 25-year-old Freddie Gray was arrested in Maryland by Baltimore police officers for an undisclosed violation. Mr. Gray was apparently not in poor health, but during the ride to police headquarters, suffered injuries to his throat and neck so severe that he fell into a coma and eventually died on April 19. Soon, news leaked out about the incident, causing riots and violence to erupt as local citizens protested what they felt was inexcusable police brutality and misinformation regarding the occurrence. On April 25th, more organized protests were held as activists marched throughout the downtown Baltimore area. Towards the end of the event, some people damaged police vehicles, broke storefront windows, and took to looting. At the time, baseball fans who were arriving in Camden Yards to watch the Orioles host the Red Sox were attacked by protesters, and attendees to that night's game were forced to remain in the park until all uninvited activity had ceased. As a result, dozens were arrested and many others injured. Gray's funeral took place April 27th with a heavy police presence all around the city. Officers prepared for a purge, which was hinted through social media outlets. Many public facilities and schools were shut down early in the day. An alleged group of high school students who were detained by police on the streets after dismissal from classes began to grow restless and began a riot that resulted in fires and damage to property and cars. This new rioting grew quickly and lasted through the evening. The April 27 and 28 baseball games scheduled in Baltimore, featuring the home team facing the Chicago White Sox, were postponed and made up as a doubleheader on May 28, the team splitting those contests. The U.S. National Guard arrived the following morning to aid local officials in security and cleanup. Most of the town was closed due to the damage and uneasiness amongst neighbors. A 10 p.m. curfew was ordered, but many protesters ignored it and stayed in the streets, again clashing with police and even deploying smoke bombs. By midnight, though, the crowd dispersed, a few dozen arrests were made, and no serious injuries were reported. Unfortunately, the city now had a damaged reputation. It was announced that the Orioles game on Wednesday the 29th would be played, but officially closed to the public, citing insufficient security, thus setting a record for lowest attendance at an official Major League Baseball game. Even though the Nationals, whose home stadium was less than 40 miles away, were playing on the road, the idea of having the game at a neutral stadium was not considered. Many feel an ongoing dispute between the Beltway franchises regarding revenue from local network MASN was the reason for this decision. As for the game itself, both teams were struggling at the season's start. The fanless contest had an unconventional start time of 2:06 Eastern Time, falling in compliance with the city's curfew. It was broadcast on television, radio, and streamed on MLB's website. Announcers and players alike described the event as surreal, the latter realizing that no crowd to play in front of hindered their performance. Security detail was enforced outside of the stadium, and fans were allowed to congregate around the park's perimeter. There were no reports of active protests or unrest among them. The Orioles put up 6 runs in the first inning, highlighted by a Chris Davis 3-run home run, and went on to win 8-2. Chicago scored both of their runs in the 5th. Members of the press were allowed to attend and continue their work as they would, reporting on the ins and outs of each team's strategy to win, but they also had many bylines to convey regarding the day's environment, the incidents that had occurred over the past few days, and thoughts as to the approach of future games. Many wrote of the eerie atmosphere being in a ballpark without the sound of fans. That life was missing from the afternoon, but the players pushed through, most likely hoping its end would come soon. The game took just 2 hours and 3 minutes to complete. The Orioles were scheduled to host the Rays over the weekend, but due to concerns over further civil unrest, MLB decided that the games would be contested in Tampa Bay, with Baltimore recognized as the home team. During this new homestand on May 1st through the 3rd, the Orioles took 2 of the 3 games and pushed their record to over 500 for the first time in 2 weeks. Evening curfews remained in Baltimore until May 3rd, with the National Guard leaving the next day. Protests continued over the course of the following week, most in peaceful fashion. The next game that Baltimore hosted, which did allow a crowd, was May 11, a victory over the Blue Jays in front of 20,000 happier fans. It's been 5 years since those events have taken place, including a once-in-a-lifetime baseball game. Baltimore and similar communities where violence has escalated due to prejudice, abuse of power, or lack of education need to stand tall and remain a beacon of hope for our entire country. In the aftermath, our hearts are with those neighborhoods, and we hope to never again experience such dissent.